स्वाध्याय टीवी डॉक्टर बाबा साहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी।
Namaskar. Welcome again in the series of lectures subject of cost accounting. We already discussed in the previous sessions where what is the cost accounting, how the cost accounting methods and techniques would be required, how the cost accounting system has to be adopted in the organizations, what are the advantages, limitations, classification of the cost. As per the classification of cost, maybe the number of terminologies has to be identified of the cost accounting, and we discuss the terminologies of a cost accounting. Now in this chapter, in this particular session, we will discuss the two important topics, that is the installation of a costing system, that is one, and the second is methods of costing. Installation of the costing system is very much required in the organization. It is not a mandatory for all the organization, or it is not a by law that all the organization has to be adopted any amount of or any particular cost accounting system in their organization. So it means that it is not a compulsory to all the organization to have their cost accounting system in their particular organization. It means that the company or organizations can decide whether they need cost accounting system in that particular organizations or not. How they will identify the cost accounting system has been required or not? Simply, suppose if the financial accounting has been adopted by the organizations or a company, and the financial accounting system is very much suitable in the organization, and they provided all the informations or necessary informations which they required, which they want at the time of a different type of decision taking, then the cost accounting may be not required. So cost accounting system may not be adopted. But if the financial accounting system and their datas are not enough, quite enough for requirement of decision taking for the future planning, and if there is some limitations has been identified from the financial accounting system, then they need to identify that why the cost accounting system and which type of cost accounting system has been suitable for the organization. Now here the steps number 2. The first step is the company has to identify whether the cost accounting system is required or not. So they will just identify that on the basis of their financial accounting system, and their data would be tried to apply it in the system and find out some clues where the cost accounting system can be avoided if the system is more than enough. Suppose if it is required, then the automatically financial accounting system shows some limitations, and that limitations would be identified, can be reflected to identify which cost accounting system can be considered on this particular organization. Now here, as the first step has been already cleared, now in the second step, the company needs to identify their objectives, their plans, the production system, and their unit and then unit of costing. So on the basis of their objectives and the nature of the work, the company can identify which cost accounting system is perfectly suitable for the particular organization. Now here the synchronizations of the company and the system is very much clear. On the basis of a nature of work and the system and the objectives, defined objectives, they can identify the few accounting systems, and on the basis of the few cost accounting system, they can adopt any one system which is more perfectly suitable for the organization. So this is what the second system. Now as they already identified the cost accounting system has been already adopted, the people and the experts has to be designed the cost accounting system in such a way that the system would be beneficial for the organizations in the coming years or for the future period. How it would be helpful for the company? One, it would be helpful for the company. So first is on the basis of the cost accounting system, they would give an idea how to control the cost. That's the first thing. Second thing is how you can identify your cost of a product, how you can decide your selling price, which type of cost and elements of cost has been actually identified for the different work or different departments, and on the basis of that structure the company can define their cost structures and the cost unit. So on the basis of the cost structure and cost unit, it would be synchronized and design a proper costing system for the organization. So now here on the basis of this requirement, they can identify that the cost accounting system is a system that accumulates the cost, assigned programs and the cost objectives and reports of a cost information. So the all informations would be actually synchronized and get it properly for the system and applied in the particular organization. So here what is actually required? Now the cost accounting system has been designed in such a way that it would be helpful to control the cost. That is what their main object to adopted this cost accounting system in the organization. The second thing is that the system would be identified in such a way that the minimize of all the wastages and optimum utilization of all the different resources which are actually used in the organization. So cost accounting system has been identified and designed in such a way that they can reduce their wastages and use the optimum utilization of their resources. And the important part of that is the cost accountant has to be designed the cost accounting system in such a way that it should be avoid all the limitations and identified the more and more advantage and benefits of the system to increase their efficiency, effectiveness, so they can use very promptly and easily for the benefits of the organization. So the cost accountant would be actually identified the system in such a way that it would be beneficial and avoided in such all the requirements of the particular part of the system. Now moving to the next part, that is some basic installation costing system is required. What type of the important points to be discussed? The first point is it should be designed in such a way that the requirement of such analysis to be identified. So the cost accounting system has been designed in such a way that they can design properly and you can carefully analyze the whole system, which would be helpful how the cost accounting objectives has been identified, and on the basis of their objectives it is actually designed in such a way that the cost accounting helpful for the requirement of the whole structure and the organization, that the cost unit would be requirement of the manufacturing product as well as it would be reducing your cost and the amount of efficiency has been determined. So the cost as the material has been actually already purchased by the company and the material would be utilized in the business also. So we need to identify how it would be carefully analyzed. The analysis system has been actually already adopted in the company. Now this would be considered that the system to be taken, or maybe a cost accounting system has actually designed the way of objectives and synchronize with that particular company to find out the best optimum utilization of the requirement, and this way that it has to be designed. Now the second is controllable and uncontrollable factors. Now the controllable and uncontrollable factors is actually identified that the cost accounting could not be actually identified in the basis of the such process. So here the particular manufacturing company have a search system that they can identify their job work, their process work, their unit work. So how the job work has been progress, how the process work has been actually designed, and this particular work have a certain amount of a process. So there are some things or there are some particular clues which are uncontrolled or controllable. So they need to identify the controllable and uncontrollable factors, and that controllable and uncontrollable factors to be identified and judge with this particular how it can be used in the system to get a maximum amount of outcome. The next point is that is consultation of a technical experts, that is perfectly required. Here in the organizations there are many departments, and in the departments there are different type of experts. Suppose if in the material department there are the material management experts or material managers. In the case of a production department there are production managers as well as the supervisors and maybe the foremen. In the case of a store department there is the store manager. In case of an account department, accountant. So all these people and all these experts are actually need to identify that which costing system has been adopted by the company and how this costing system has been worked in the organization. So if these experts are knowing that how this costing systems is work, they can actually find out the best outputs and best outcomes of this cost accounting system, and they can understood and works in according to the requirement of the system. So these experts would be definitely helpful in the case of the system would be adopted by the company. The next is involvement of employees. It is must required. Without involvement of employees in the cost accounting system, maybe the system would not be work properly. So it means that the person who are actually working in the system or working in the organization, they should know that how the system is actually processed, how the system has worked, how the line of action of the cost accounting system is actually working in this particular company. So it means that if the proper output and efficiently the system has to be worked, all employees has to be identified and then should know that how the system has actually worked. So in that case the system has to be synchronized with all the employees, and the system worked required and knowledge to be given to each and every employees thus required of the particular system. The next is data communicated in proper time. That is perfectly fine. Here the cost accounting system is adopted by the organization because of the company is willing to know that what amount of costing records and how the costing records has been prepared. Now suppose if they are actually they are in a process of taking a decision for a future planning, and if the data is not available with the people who are actually try to finalize the decision, then it may not be helpful the cost accounting system for the respected way. So in that sense, whatever the data has been prepared and whatever the data has been actually selected from the system, this has to be passed out to the person or a committee or the managers who are supposed to take a decision or who are supposed to actually handle the committee who are involving with the future planning and future decision. So it means that the reports and data, all the things has to be identified, and at the time of a policy making or a future planning or a decision making, this data and report to be supplied to the respected channel or to the respected committee to take a simple way the decision would be more smoother and efficiently for the organization. So these are the ways the cost accounting system has to be adopted and implied in the business. So this is what the first point of this session, that is the cost accounting system adoption. Now we'll move to the next point, that is methods and techniques of the costing. There are several methods and techniques of the costing system. Let's discuss one by one. Start with the first method, that is output or a single costing, or it can be said unit costing. Unit costing means the company, if involves with the manufacturing of a product or a provided or a rendered a different type of services, they can adopted unit costing or a single costing or an output costing. But single or output costing method, it's a continuous process. It means that once the manufacturing process has begun, then in the basis of that the raw material inputs, and automatically in the single process or in a continuous process, if it actually manufactured, this is what the single output costing. So it means that it's a continuous process system where this particular method can be adopted, or the provided rendered services also in a single way that the company can adopted a single output costing. How you can identify the single costing or an output costing or a unit costing? In case of any manufacturing company can identify the number of units manufactured with the total amount of a cost of production. So the divided by the total number of units to the cost of production, the whatever the amount has been identified, that is a unit costing. So on the basis of the number of units manufactured by the company, then company can easily identify their unit costing or a single costing. Which type of business they can actually use this particular single costing or unit costing method? Maybe if they are manufacturing toys, confectionery products, or maybe they are manufacturing a single output unit like small fasteners or something like that. So in that way, this type of business companies or organizations can use the single unit costing or an output costing. Moving to the next point, that is departmental costing. What is departmental costing? Now see here, in the organization there are several departments like a production department, manufacturing department, service department, account department, store department, finance department, purchase department, sales department. Alright. So in that way there are several departments are actually running in this particular organization. Now company is willing to know that the what amount of costing has actually identified or what amount of costing incurred in this particular organization. So the company can divide all the departments on the basis of their nature and the identified of the all the departments of a different cost elements. So on the basis of their cost elements, the whatever the expenditures are incurred, it would be recorded on the department wise, and at end they can identify the amount of cost on each department or on a department wise. It is called a departmental costing. So it means that if the company is willing to know that the amount of expenditures on a department wise, it would be prepared on a departmental costing also. Moving to the next method, that is process costing. Process costing is actually involved with the organization where the number of processes are actually involved. It means that if the production is not identified, or if the manufacturing product is not converted into a finished product in one process, but if it is required a number of processes for the finished for the final goods or for the finished goods, in that sense the process costing may be involved. Fine. Like an example, suppose the sugar manufacturing. In that case, the sugar industry is actually manufacturing a sugar with a number of processes. It starts with the sugar cane crushing, then it's drying, then it is maybe coloring, and then it may be again a part of finishing part. So it means that the product has been manufactured in number of processes, and the cost elements are also different in a process to process. Then need to identify the what type of cost has been incurred in the different process and how it is actually transfer into a succeeding process. So in that sense, the company willing to know that the amount of cost on each process as well as the how much amount of profitability has to be added into the each process, which would be transferred into the next process or in a succeeding process, and at the end of the product or at the end of the process, what would be the finished product and what would be the amount of finished product, that is called the process costing. So it means that the company who are involving with the number of process for the manufacturing of goods or a product, they are adopted this process costing. Moving to the next method, that is contract costing. Contract costing is generally used for a big contracts and a huge amount of contracts. Actually I just wanted to explain with an example. Suppose if the company is involving with the construction business, architectural business, or maybe they are involving with the big contracts or big projects where the huge amount has been involved. Not only that, the huge machineries are also involved with the particular business. So in that sense, this contract costing method is perfectly suitable. It is a part of a job costing. Job costing has been actually divided into a two part. One is a job costing and the second one is a contract costing. Job costing is generally used for a small business, for a small amount of contract, and the contract costing is used for a huge amount or for a larger contract. So in that sense, the contract costing has to be identified where the huge amount of a contract has involved, and in that sense the contract has to be identified which has to be finished in a specific duration. It means that the contract has been taken by the company for a specific period of time. They are willing to know that the what amount of expenditures are incurred on the basis of a specific contract. Suppose if you want to take an example, the example is the company the X company is taking a contract to construct a one building, and this contract has been taken for 2 years. It means that the X company is taken a contract for from a Y company, and the construct a building would be finishing in 2 years. So in that sense, the X and Y is actually in a contract to deal with this particular transaction. It means that the contract has been signed between the X and Y. So the contractor has actually designed in such a way the contract accounts and a contract cost that all the cost has been identified in respect manner. So here the huge amount and huge contract is involved in the particular transaction. The contract costing method would be a suitable method for the same. Next is job costing. As I already discussed, the job costing is actually the costing where the small amount of job work has been identified and the amount of job work which is to be given to the person who are actually involving with the manufacturing of a product. Here, in case of a job costing, the amount of a contract or amount of a job work is very small. It's not a huge amount. So that is why the job costing method is suitable. Here the job costing work is actually based on elements of cost. So the job work would be divided on the basis of an element of cost, that would be material, labor and overheads. Material can be identified for the job work, and the job people are actually identified that material work which would be applied to convert the raw material into a finished products, and for that they paid some labor work. In case of the some overheads are actually incurred for converting a raw material into a finished products, that overheads is also added into that part. But ultimately the whole part of the structure and whole part of the cost for the manufacturing of the product is as compared to the contract costing, it is little lesser or it is very small amount. So that is why in case of a small contract or a small work, the job costing is a suitable method. Moving to the next part, that is multiple costing or a composite costing. I just want to tell you here, in case of the organization is actually involving with the business where the one costing method is not maybe suitable. Maybe the organization is required a unit costing, maybe a departmental costing, maybe they need a part of the process costing. So in case of if there are required of so many methods to be adopted in that organization, it is actually better to apply a composite costing or a multiple costing. So in the case of a multiple costing means that any organization which are required for the different type of costing methods in the same organization, better to adopted a multiple or a composite costing, which would be helpful to identify their cost on the basis of respected heads, and at the end all the costing has to be composite and find out the final cost of the particular product. So in that way the multiple costing or a composite costing would be helpful for the organization. Moving to the next method, that is operating costing. Fine. As we already discussed, as above all the costing system, most probably all this costing system is actually helpful for a manufacturing of a unit or a production, right? But in this case operating costing, it would be more helpful for the service sector. That means the organization which are actually involving with the provided different type of services like a bus services or a transport services or an electricity supply services or a water supply services or etc. What type of services they can actually involve. So any type of services they are involving, if they are willing to know what amount of cost as actually identified for their products or for their services, the operating costing method is perfectly suitable for them. So, operating costing is rather than the manufacturing a product, it would be more helpful or more comfortable method for the service sectors or a service organization. So, the service organization can adopt the operating costing method. Moving to the next method, that is batch costing. Batch costing is actually generally adopted by the organization who are actually involving the manufacturing of a large number of units or a large number of products. It means that the units which are actually manufactured in a lakhs of units or in a number of units. So, in that sense, the batch costing would be identified because of it may be required a different type of sample has to be taken from the batches, and on the basis of the some batches, or maybe the costing also may be differ on a batch to batch sometimes. So, the company is actually interested to identify the what amount of costing has been changed in case on the basis of batch this costing system would be applied. Like in a pharmaceutical company, confectionery business, this type of organizations are actually adopted this batch costing. So, the batch costing is actually involved in the case of the large number of units are manufactured by the company. Moving to the next point, that is uniform costing. Uniform costing is a costing method where the simple costing method has been adopted, and on the basis of the any particular method which are identified by the organization, which are suitable in the organization, can be adopted by the company. That is what the uniform costing. Moving to the next point, that is standard costing. It is very much important, rather it is actually a consideration of a part of methods, you can say is a technique also. The standard costing is a costing which actually identified the some variances. How the variances can be identified? Variances can be identified with the some comparisons. How the comparisons can be made? Like in case of the any manufacturing unit or involving with the manufacturing of a product, they just willing to know that what amount of variances actually inputs or what type of variances actually incurred in the particular product. How? Simply, whatever the expenditures are incurred for the manufacturing of a product, that is their actual cost. So, the actual cost is one. Now, second is before they start the manufacturing of the next process or the next product or the next unit, they just having some predetermined cost, or maybe the company is actually try to assume some amount of cost for the manufacturing of the same product. So, here the one they have already actual cost is incurred for the manufacturing of the one product, and the same product is actually manufacturing again. Before the manufacturing of the same product, they have some predetermined cost, and at the particular part of comparison of actual cost and predetermined cost, if there would be any variances or there are any variances, so this variances is called a standard costing. So, standard costing would be helpful to control the cost. This technique is useful by it can be used by all the manufacturer, rather it is as that is why I mentioned it is rather method, it is more technique. So, this technique can be used by all the manufacturer, and on the basis of this technique the company can easily identify their cost reduction and how the cost can be controlled with the comparison of actual cost and predetermined cost. Moving to the next point, and that is last, that is marginal costing. Marginal costing, I just want to tell you, rather it is a part of technique and method. It would be more an activity base. How it would be an activity base? It is very simple. Marginal costing is actually helpful, rather it is helpful to controlling the cost. It would be helpful how the profitability has been changed by the increasing or a decreasing of a one unit, because of the marginal costing is actually based on a variable cost. So, in case any particular manufacturing unit variable cost is actually increase so fastly, it would be directly impacted on their profitability. So, here on the basis of the increase or decrease by the one unit, if their profitability or their costing has been changed, increase or decrease vice versa or according to that, that is actually called a marginal costing. So, the marginal costing is helpful to identify the change of their profitability according to their unit of unit increase or decrease. So this is what all about the methods and techniques of cost accounting. So we discuss in this session two important points. One is how the costing system has been adopted by the different organization in their business, and the second, which type of methods and techniques can be used by the company on the basis of their nature of a business. So this is what all about today's session. Thank you very much.
स्वाध्याय टीवी